image. Thank you for watching this video until it is finished. If useful to you guys, please like and share this video. If you have any suggestions,
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to all our TCMayers, to the parents, and to all our viewers there. Welcome to another special episode of You Matter. And in today's episode, our special guest speaker and lecturer is an international model, a registered nurse, an entrepreneur. She is a fashion designer. She makes custom and modest designs like dresses you would see royals wear, like Kate Middleton and Meghan Markle. She dressed local celebs like Sarah Geronimo and Megan Young and Colleen Garcia, Tony Gonzaga, and other beauty queens. During the pandemic, she became a vegan baker um, under Bakehouse, so you can check that out. And lastly, but not the least, she is a beauty queen. Miss Philippines 2009 and Miss Earth Philippines 2009 and Miss Earth Air 2009. She is Miss Sandra Seifert. This is a special webinar entitled You Matter. Mind your health, physical, mental, and emotional wellness. Again, I am Camille Torres Estela, TCMS PIO or Public Information Officer and Foreign Language Teacher, your moderator for this webinar. At the end of the talk of our speaker, there will be a question and answer portion. So you may drop your questions in the comment section below for a chance to have your questions answered by Miss Sandra herself. So, are you all excited to be inspired by our speaker for today? Without further ado, let us watch this video.
Nikki, we have Negros Occidental. Hello.
Good evening, San Arena.
Okay, here's my question.
Thank you.
What is the most pressing problem that your municipality, city, or province faces, and what personal contribution you can do to help solve it?
Thank you for the question. I believe that in Negros Occidental, our principal problem is to promote waste segregation. It is a problem because it's inevitable that we all produce waste, and I'm so grateful for that question because that was actually my advocacy. So out of 13 cities, only 3 of the cities right now are practicing the Solid Waste Management Act 9003, which means we need to cover 10 more and 90 more municipalities. This is why we must act now. Let us not sit back and relax, but instead really, really take into consideration Mother Nature because she is taking care of us. Now it's our time. Thank you.
Thank you, girl.
Thank you very much, ladies. Whew. Province of Negros Occidental, Sandra Seifert.
Hi, Sans! How are you?
Good afternoon, Camille. Hello to everyone, all our viewers, the students, the teachers, the parents. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad to be here. How are you, Camille?
I'm doing great, thank you. And thank you so much for sharing your time with us. Thank you for coming on our webinar, You Matter.
Of course. It's really a privilege and a blessing for me, honestly. And what better time to get together and to learn than now, right? While we're at home and still connected.
Yes, it's a pleasure. The pleasure is ours to have you here. All right, so kumusta ka ngayon? Like, what's keeping you busy these days?
Well, number one for me is, of course, to take good care of myself and my family, stay healthy and safe, right? Because we're
in the midst of a pandemic. And as you mentioned earlier in the intro, I do have two businesses I currently run. So the first one, which I started a few years ago, is Suravilla. That's the clothing brand. And just a little trivia for all our viewers. Camille here, teacher Camille, she's actually one of our Suravilla muses. So she was one of the first women to model the brand. She also embodies it so well because we focus more on modest design and royalty type of fashion, but that's also accessible and affordable. So Camille here is one of my muses, aside from being my dear friend. And aside from that, the pandemic kind of led me to explore a new talent that the Lord has given me, which is to bake vegan. So I started Bake House by Sandra Seifert during this pandemic, and we focus more on, or I guess I'm the only person really doing it right now, but I focus more on baking vegan goods, muffins. We have a lot of bestsellers. Like I started with banana walnut loaves that are vegan, and then now I've expanded it to vegan bread that has like no oil, no sugar, no dairy, and then muffins as well. So it's quite exciting, and it's also a great opportunity to offer to, let's say, cancer patients or people that are undergoing or suffering from diabetes, because I can modify the ingredients so that they can still have access to something like these baked goods, but the healthy version. So yeah, that's been keeping me busy. And right now, I don't know if you noticed, my setting is a little bit different from home. I'm actually in the hospital right now, but more to accompany my dad for treatment. So this is a very special live for me because I'm actually going live from the hospital. And yeah. If there's any emergency, I might have to mute you guys, but if not, hopefully not. Yeah, we'll get through this.
Yes, wow. Nothing really stops you, huh? So the pandemic didn't stop you. You have a new talent, and now you're at the hospital, but still you joined us. So wow, I'm really thankful. All right, so without any further ado, I'll give the floor to you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Camille. Yeah, I just want to add to what you mentioned, that it's really important for us to take good care of our parents, right? Especially during this time. So mga students natin, so mga kids out there, remember, we will be extra blessed if we take good care of our parents and we honor them. So that's one thing that I am thankful I get to do right now. Okay, so I have prepared a special presentation for all of you. I'll just go ahead and share my screen, and then we should be able to start. Let me just know if you can see my screen. Yeah? Camille, kids, are you guys able to see my slides?
Yes, we can see your slide.
Okay, perfect. All right, so as I mentioned earlier today, I prepared something really special for all of you. And I actually prayed about this topic. Before all my talks, I pray because I consider it a blessing to be able to share valuable knowledge with anyone, right? Nowadays, people are so busy. I mean, even if we're just home, we are busy, as Camille said, right? Some things just can't stop us from being busy. So I really thank you for your time. And I really made an effort to gather some really valuable information for all of you. And yeah, just like this is a blessing to me, I hope that you also always remember to count your blessings, okay? So without further ado, let me go ahead and get started. Speaking of blessings, right? One of the greatest blessings that the Lord has given all of us is actually the human brain, right? And, this is the reason why we can study as students, why we can learn and grow. It's like a control center for everything, right? All our body organs are also managed in a way by what happens in the brain. So the brain is such a powerful and important organ. And I want to share some quick trivia with all of you about how amazing and powerful our brain really is. There's a lot of fun facts about the brain, but these ones really stood out to me. Number one is the memory capacity of the brain. You see, when you look at, let's say, your phones, right? I usually check like how many gigabytes your phone has and whatnot. But did you guys know that anyone's brain memory capacity is so big that it can store the entire data of the internet. I mean, I didn't know that until I researched this, but that's crazy because there's so much information on the net, right? And all of that can technically be stored by our brains. But it doesn't just end there. Did you know that our brain can actually produce electricity if you really break it down? It has the capacity to spark or turn on light bulbs. And on top of that, it can even function as a charger. So if you wanted to charge, let's say, your iPhone, it would take much longer, of course, because the impulses and the electricities that travel throughout the neurons, like you would need around 285 days to fully charge, let's say, your iPhone, right? So it does take longer, but it's technically possible for our brain to charge electrically, let's say, a gadget. And on top of that, did you know that our brain is composed of neurons, and those are like nerve cells, right? And we have 90 billion nerve cells. That's equivalent to about half of the stars in the galaxy. Isn't that mind-blowing? So this is like kind of how majestic our brain is created. And if you look at all the parts of the brain, let's say the nerves and the capillaries, all of that, if you connect all of these, that would allow you to travel around the Earth 2.5 times. In short, 60,000 miles rather of length would basically accumulate if you were to connect all the parts, all these little neurons and veins and capillaries from the brain. So it's really amazing and mind-blowing. And on top of that, our brain is also very adaptable. So it's really fascinating because it has the ability to change. It's not just fixed a certain way. Let's say like the heart is the way it is, but the brain has the capacity to transform, right? And what's really interesting is that studies have shown that when we behold something, right, we have the opportunity because of our brains to transform and to become more of what it is that we behold, right? And that's why I included this quote here by William Blake: you become what you behold, because it's really possible because of our brains to transform and to change, right? Because the brain eventually follows and guides us to follow in that transformation. Now, here's the problem with that, because if you start to behold something that's a little bit more negative, right, chances are you might actually also transform or become a little bit more negative or sad or depressed. And that actually tends to happen to someone like me when I watch the news. So here's like a quick recap of some current events that are happening. If you look at Europe, for instance, they've recently experienced yung mga baha, we call them here in the Philippines, or in English, floods, right? In areas like Germany, where my dad comes from, that have never experienced flooding at all, like in so many years. So this is really shocking, but world news, you know? And a lot of people are just like saddened by this information. Then shift naman tayo to the Philippines. In our case here, we have major health issues aside from being, in this pandemic. Of course, now the Delta variant has made its way, and there's more variants coming in. And all of these are, of course, not the best type of news we want to hear, right? And as we behold these things, it can really affect us and sadden us. And then if you go a little bit further to Afghanistan, right? I don't know if you've been keeping track of the international news, but now the Taliban has taken over Kabul airport there. And, a lot of civilians are just basically lost. And like their futures are unpredictable now. A lot of them have escaped, but there's still a lot of people there. And it's just, the earth right now is not in the best state, in different ways, calamities, health, just we see like a lot of negativity if we turn on the news, right? So as we behold these things, I don't blame people, and I totally understand when you see or hear the phrase "it's okay not to be okay," because really we live in very, very strange times, right? I mean, biblically speaking, these days are suitable to a description of the last days that we live in. So what I want to also address is that we don't even have normal living circumstances, right? A lot of us are still in quarantine, especially here in the Philippines, like whether in Manila, for example, depending on what the government, mandates, it's either MECQ or GCQ, whatever it may be, we're still in quarantine, right? It's been 2 years plus. So it's been a long time, and we are also more limited at home with what we behold. As you can see here, for example, this boy looks like a student, and he is more exposed to his screen now, his gadgets. A lot of kids are on their gadgets now, right? Because it is one of the outlets that we have, right? But it's also very critical, and we must be very careful with how we manage our gadgets, because when you have access to the internet, you have access to the good and the bad, to knowledge and news and fake news and other things that we maybe shouldn't even behold. So it's important for us to be very careful of what it is that we behold, especially as students, right? And we live in a generation they often call the ADD generation, attention deficit disorder type of generation, which means our attention span is very, very short. In fact, back in 2000, they said that the average attention span of a person used to be 12 seconds before, let's say, their attention shifts to something else. But now it is actually reduced to 8 seconds. And when you compare that, let's say, to a goldfish whose attention span is only 9 seconds, that's how short people's attention span is on average nowadays. 8 seconds, which is equivalent to pretty much that of a goldfish. So, time matters, attention matters. And that's why I'm also really grateful that you are giving me your time and attention today to familiarize with such topics, right? And I think that ultimately what we behold, whatever it is that we do, our environment can really affect our mind, right? So it's so important that we keep our mind healthy, because if our mind, our control center is healthy, right, everything will follow, right? Our body will follow too. In fact, I don't know if you knew this, but mental health, right? So the health of our minds, basically is very, very much interconnected with the health of our physical condition, right? So if you are healthy mentally, then most likely you're also healthy physically, and vice versa. So they both depend on each other, these categories. There's this mind and body connection that exists, whether we like it or not. And I want to share real quickly this term with you, which is called psychosomaticism, because I actually experienced this back when I was a student in college. I took nursing, and I studied in the States, New York to be more specific. And I remember after my 3-year nursing course, it was time for me to take the boards. So I was in review mode, and about 3 days before my final exams, right, I took the NCLEX boards. That's the one that you take for nursing to get your license. 3 days before that, I was reviewing, but I was so nervous, and mentally I was so worried, because I would be tested on 3 years of information that I had been studying and learning. And I was really worried that, maybe I wouldn't pass, right? Like I didn't know what to expect. I could just give my best and study as much as I could, but you just won't know until the day itself, like how you do in the exam. So because I was so worried and so like nervous and scared, since I studied so much and I didn't want to fail as a student, I wanted my family to be proud of me and all that, I started to experience a certain pain in my legs, to the point where I couldn't move like my right foot. And I was like wondering why I couldn't move it. I didn't fall or I didn't like bend it, but it felt crampy to the point where if I tried to walk, it was so painful and I couldn't really do much. I was limited in movement. And back then I was a student in New York, and when you live in New York, you have to commute, you have to take the stairs, you have to take the bus, you take the train to get to school. So I got even more nervous because I was like, oh no, so how can I even take my exam now because I can't even walk? So it was a really, really challenging moment in my life, but I researched it and then I came across this term of psychosomaticism. And if you break it down, basically what this word means is, okay, the first half is psycho, which means the mind, the brain in a medical terminology, and soma means body. So psycho, mind, and body, psychosomaticism basically means that that's the connection between the mind and the body, right? And since my mind was so worried, the body basically responded to that worry by my foot basically experiencing pain, right? It could be different things, and I'll cover that a little bit later on as well. But that was my true to life experience with psychosomaticism. So we need to understand that we need to protect the condition of our mind, and we need to understand what factors really affect our mental health, which is what we'll study today. Okay, so moving forward, I wanted to quickly touch upon the 5 dimensions of wellness, right? So I'm sure most of you have heard of these or seen these 5 aspects, or you're aware of this. But essentially, if we go over them, there's the physical, emotional, mental, social, and spiritual area of any human being. And all those areas, right? If they are healthy and intact, you have what is called holistic health. But what's also interesting to know is that the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, and the social areas all affect your mental health, right? So aside from just, let's say, your body and your mind connecting, right? Whatever area, let's say your social life or your spiritual life or your emotional life, these areas also affect your mental health. And I want to briefly touch on those areas and give you some examples. For instance, I know we've been indoors a lot because of quarantine, right? But exercise has a direct effect on our mental health. If you are actively exercising, right, at least 30 minutes a day, and if you can go for aerobic exercises, that's even better. Make sure to break a sweat. You are on the right track, and you have the opportunity to reduce stress, reduce anxiety, reduce the risk of depression, increase your social well-being, increase your self-esteem, and boost your brain power, especially because of that athlete's high and the endorphins that you gain from exercise. So it's really important for you to understand that aside from just working out every day or every other day because, let's say, you want to be in shape or look good, there are so many benefits for your mental health because you exercise, right? And you can also just manage your stress better, and you'll just be a better version of yourself up here, which will then again translate to being physically healthier too, right? Because when you exercise, you also release all those toxins because you sweat, and you won't really gain weight. You'll burn the calories of the food that you ate, the vegan muffins that you got from Bakehouse. You burn them from the exercise. Okay, so that's the first thing I want you to see, that exercise, which is a physical activity or a physical area, affects mental health in such a way. Then next, let's move to emotions. So depending on your emotional state, this can also affect your mental health, right? For instance, if you lose a loved one, right? Like, that's a really sad example, but it affects like everything in you, right? So emotionally, you're like really, really sad and depressed, right? So another good example would be like if you're stressed, anxious, or upset about something. Studies have shown that people's blood pressure increases, or some people even develop stomach ulcer because they're stressed or they're anxious or they're upset about something. So it's important that we try not to get mad and not to let anything outside of us really affect us so severely or intensely, whether it be the news, like we saw earlier, all this negativity, or whether it be a person, or whether it be our family in our own homes. We need to be very careful with how we let people and all these external stimuli affect us, because if we do allow it to affect us, then it pulls us down emotionally and also mentally, right? And physically, we can get sick in the process. So how can we achieve good emotional health? That's always good to know. And here's just some quick tips. Make sure to express yourself. So if there's something that's bothering you, or like wag niyo itanim, sabi daw nila, right? Yung mga galit or lungkot natin, or like, let's not hide or allow to build up like our sadness or our anger inside. Let's really try to express it, and there's different ways to express it, whether it's verbal, especially for the women, we need to release, so we talk a lot more, or whether it's, let's say, through a talent or through an exercise. Make sure to let it out, vent, express it. And it's okay, again, not to be okay, be aware as well, of your emotional state. Don't try to be ignorant of your feelings. Really, like, take control of how you're feeling emotionally. Try to understand why you feel this way. Who knows, maybe if you feel this way every month during certain days, like, that's probably because if you're a woman, you're going to get your period. So, you're aware, and next month you're more prepared and you'll know how to manage it better, right? It's also really important to stay positive, especially during our time. I know we can't, celebrate this pandemic and be all smiles every day, but we have to try to see the little things that are blessings, the good. We have to be hopeful. We have to be positive, because that's what's going to get us through, Just because things seem so uncertain doesn't mean that, we don't have a future to look forward to. And, I personally call that faith, walking by faith and trusting in the Lord. And that's kind of what keeps me positive too, and reading like precious promises in the Bible. But yeah, stay positive, guys, and be resilient. Tayong mga Filipinos, we're known for that, resiliency, right? Come what may, smile pa rin tayo, and like we stick together, which is great, or at least we try. And then gratitude, as I mentioned earlier, count your blessings. It's also really important to meditate, to relax, to pray. Those are all great ways to cope emotionally. And take good care of yourself. Sleep. A lot of us are losing sleep nowadays. We're so carried away by our gadgets, and we lose track of time, but sleeping enough and on time is key also to good emotional health, as well as eating healthy meals and having a routine. So studies have shown that all these things contribute to good emotional health, which will also help us to cope better with many things, including this pandemic. Yeah. And ultimately will give us healthy relationships. Who doesn't want that? So that is the area of emotional, like the emotional category affecting our mental health, right? So make sure we're emotionally healthy too, para mentally healthy din tayo. The next one is the social area of humanity. So, we humans are very social, and we're wired in such a way that we need to connect with people, especially in person, right? But what do you do during a pandemic where the social is now kind of replaced by social distancing, right? It definitely has an impact, and that's a study in itself on how people are dealing with social distancing mentally, right? And how this affects their mental health. But we need to be mindful that we are social creatures. No man is an island, right? God did not create Adam to be alone. Eve came and they had the kids. So, we need each other. We need to connect. This is actually how we grow. We go out, we interact, we explore, and we grow. That's why studies have also shown that people that are more alone in life, I guess you call them loners. I'm not sure if introverted people are also all loners, because you could be introverted but still kind of go out. But loners for sure don't grow as much apparently as, let's say, social people. So it's important to be sociable, and make those connections for your growth, right? Yeah, and always remember that, like, as you grow, you build your character, your thoughts, your emotions are shaped as you interact with other people. And yeah, that's how you become the best version of you. Also, it enhances you. That's why they say when someone is usually well traveled, they grow a lot, because they see so much, they learn so much about other cultures, languages, food, etc. So I know it would be nice to travel right now, but there are other ways for us to grow. And let's just remember that this also affects our mental health. So we need to stay social somehow. And I guess for now it will be through social media most of the time. So that's like a good reason to be on social media, right? Because we want to grow and we want to connect. Moving on, we still have the spiritual aspect, right? So how does spirituality affect mental health? Very, very important to know is that most people that are spiritual or are part of a faith and religion, believe in the Lord, they have better relationships, they manage stress better, and they have a lot of inner strength. And that is very important, especially during our time right now, because a lot of people are getting sick, right? And when you're sick, the goal is to recover. And studies have shown that people that have faith in the Lord, or that are spiritual or religious, they have a better chance at recovery. And studies have shown that they actually recovered more than people that aren't religious, for example. What's also behind that is people that have faith, are religious, are spiritual, they have a sense of peace, a sense of purpose, and for whatever exists in the world that we consider bad or negative, they have that sense of forgiveness. So when you have that sense of forgiveness in you as well, it's easier for you to let go of the bad and just, move forward. Better confidence as well, and more self-esteem and more self-control, right? Which is like very important. Temperance. So yeah, this is what I want to share with all of you, that these other areas of wellness really affect our mental health. And now I also want to show you, especially the students, something that I learned, which is how food can affect our mental health. Because all of us, I don't know anyone who doesn't love food. So is it fair to say all of us love food, right? But there are certain foods that we want to avoid. And I know a lot of students, including myself before, we would eat these things, especially when we're stressed or we're, in school, or we have exams. We're not too careful with our physical health or what we eat, just focus on our tests. But it's important that we feed our brains literally the right type of food. So the first, type of food or ingredient that I want to highlight during this presentation is an ingredient called MSG, which stands for monosodium glutamate. Some of you might have heard it. In the Philippines, we have what is called ajinomoto. That's like something used in the kitchen to add like salt or pepper to dishes, right? But did you know that it's also found in all these types of foods that students love, like anyone loves, like chips, processed foods, shelf or canned goods. All of these, they contain MSG. And you can probably, if you have time, Google this, what else contains monosodium glutamate, because you want to make sure that you avoid these kinds of foods, and you want to avoid these kinds of foods because they have a serious effect on your brain, especially long term. So here's a visual of a normal brain on the left, which is clear. There are like no white lesions, right? So the white areas represent lesions. And then you have a brain on the right with lesions. And so what the consumption of MSG does, or the foods that contain MSG over time, is it creates lesions in our brain. MSG is considered a neurotoxin. Medically speaking, neuro represents brain and toxin is a poison. So MSG is actually poisonous for us. But still, it is found in a lot of foods, and sometimes it has different names. And an equivalent to MSG is also a sweetener that is called aspartame. And when I say equivalent, I mean that it has the same type of effect on our brain. So sweeteners that are found in, products today, when you read the labels, that's why it's important to read labels. When you read those words like aspartame, MSG, you want to avoid those foods because they're not going to do your brain any good. They'll do your tongue good for like a few seconds while you're chewing it and swallowing it, and it's so sarap or good. But after that, like, kawawa yung brain, like our minds, which are so powerful and wonderfully made, are gonna suffer long term because we're gonna increase in lesions, and it's gonna affect many things in our control center. Yeah, so hopefully you can start to avoid these types of foods and replace them with healthier options. Next, okay, as a baker myself, I also have a sweet tooth, and the next thing I want to address is sugar. Okay, so sugar actually impacts our brains too, and it impacts our memory and learning ability. I know this is going to hurt a little bit, but it's really good for us to know, right? Because knowledge is power, and if we are aware, we know what to do. So throughout the body, excess sugar is harmful, all right? So excess. In fact, I read in a study that the average consumption of sugar for every American is 42 tablespoons per day. Can you believe that? And that's like sourced from, let's say, beverages or baked goods or actual sugar in their coffee. So 42 tablespoons a day, if I'm not mistaken. And that's a lot. Tablespoons, or teaspoons, but 42. And even a single instance of elevated glucose in the bloodstream can be harmful to the brain, resulting in slowed cognitive function. So cognitive is like the function of your mind, and deficits in memory and attention. So if you're studying for your tests and you start eating your donuts or anything sugary, don't be shocked if you start forgetting some things, because it does affect our memory and our attention as well. So some research suggests high sugar consumption causes inflammation in the brain, leading to memory difficulties. So if you're having a hard time remembering things, have a look at your diet and see if it's high in sugar, because there's a direct correlation to that, according to studies. Additional research shows that a diet high in added sugar reduces the production brain-derived neurotrophic factor BDNF, a brain chemical essential for new memory formation and learning. So, of course, we want to continue to grow and learn, right? Especially as students, and we need to equip ourselves with the right types of foods, not with foods that will limit our learning capacity and won't allow us to build new memory, right? Remember, we have memory capacity to store the entire internet data. So if we eat the right foods, we can actually expand our memory that way. And then this is also really interesting. Sugar actually has the same effect on our brains as drugs do. Look at this. And just like illegal drugs, large amounts of sugar can be very bad for you. In addition to obesity and diabetes, sugar can deeply affect your metabolism, impair brain function, and make you more susceptible to heart disease and cancer. It can even form premature wrinkles. Ayan. So for everyone who doesn't want to look aged or like avoid wrinkles, try to avoid all these like types of refined and processed sugars, right? Given all this, it's pretty likely you're over-consuming. Ayan. So a small portion won't harm you much, right? In fact, glucose is essential for the brain, and for our, carbohydrates are also good for us to have for energy, but most of the time we overconsume, and anything that's done in excess is never good, right? And this was also very alarming for me to read. Almost 40% of children's diets now come from added sugars and unhealthy fats. So there's a lot of like hidden sugars in the things that we feed our children. So let's start reading labels more. And here's a quick snapshot of a brain that is consuming sugar or has consumed high doses of sugar, and a brain on the right that has been exposed to cocaine, and which is a drug, right, an illegal drug. and you can see that it has the same effect on the brain, right? And this is a whole study in itself that you should look into, actually. These are all things that are interesting and good to know. But yeah, there's definitely a very strong resemblance. And then I also want to touch really briefly on dairy, because I'm not sure if you guys knew this, but the most addictive food in the world is actually pizza. And it is addictive because, well, who doesn't love pizza, right? But it is because of the cheese on top, right? The cheese on top like contains something called casein, right? Actually, there's a slide on that here. There you go. And new research argues that cheese is addictive in a way similar to drugs like sugar because of a chemical called casein, which is found in dairy products and can trigger the brain's opioid receptors, Ayan. So the effect of cheese or anything cheesy on the brain is also similar to that of sugar. Like it creates this high, and that's why it's so highly addictive, just like the way illegal drugs are. But what's more important here with regards to our mental capacity and health is, it says here, the intake of whole fat dairy products, including ice cream and cream, were associated with increased depression, anxiety, stress, cognitive failures, cognitive failures, right? Not being able to mentally advance, poorer memory functioning, and general health. So not everything that we enjoy is really good for our mental health. And it's really important to keep this in mind, literally, right? So if we look at the youth today, suicidal rates have gone up, especially during this pandemic. I did a separate study on that. And a lot of teens, they're going through depression, anxiety, just high-risk behavior, resorting to alcohol, smoking, drugs. I mean, especially the pandemic is not helping to that, but we want to try to avoid all of that. We want to make sure that we protect our brains, and also what we eat contributes to protecting our brains. And then here there's a study, an article I found in Forbes, just real quickly on cheese as well. So they call them opiates, right? Another form of opiate is like morphine, for example. These are like really like drugs, like drug category, but cheese is also comparable to that because these opiates found in cheese, they attach to the same brain receptors that heroin and morphine attach to. They are not strong enough to get you arrested, but they are strong enough to keep you coming back for more, even while your thighs are expanding before your very eyes. So just know that like sugar and cheese, there's also chocolate, which is another study, and even caffeine. These are all highly addictive foods or substances that we want to try to avoid. I know like students, even during my time before, we would consume that a lot, but yeah, like more recent studies have shown like the negative, effects of it on mental health. So if we can avoid it, better. Okay, and I hope you guys are still good. I'm more than halfway through. I just want to quickly touch on one of my life secrets. The video that you watched at the beginning of You Matter today. That was like me 12 years ago. But it's funny because a lot of people still tell me I haven't aged a day, right? I'm 37 now. Very, very proud to say that. And I'm so thankful for this blessing of what I'm about to share with you, which is the 8 laws of health. Because if I had not known the 8 laws of health, I don't think I would be in the shape that I am today. And like the Sandra that I am in front of you right now. So I want to quickly share those 8 laws of health with you. And they can be best remembered through this acronym, which is New Start. And each letter of this acronym represents one health law. I'll show you what they are right here. So clockwise, you have N for nutrition, E for exercise, W for water, S for sunlight, T for temperance, A for air, R for rest, and T for trust, right? So if we can, trust in God to be more specific. Yeah. So if we can maintain the 8 laws of health as best as possible on a day-to-day basis, that'll also help us stay mentally healthy, right? Because all of these are connected, and each one of these laws deserves like its own respective study, to be honest. But if you want, we can briefly just go through some important points of each of these laws, and then we can always keep in touch on social media. I'm planning to post them in more detail on my Instagram. So make sure to follow me and learn more about that. Yeah. But let's get started with nutrition. So here's a quick flash of what's good to know about nutrition. So when it comes to food, plant foods are advantageous, especially during like our generation nowadays. So if you can avoid a diet that doesn't have cholesterol, especially like cholesterol from animal fat, that's high in fiber, moderate in calories, and rich in phytochemicals, which we need for our immune system, you're on the right track. Also important to consume a lot of fiber, right? Fiber reduces the risk of heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and obesity. So what are some high fibrous foods? Oatmeal is one that you could start your day with. Really lets you go to the bathroom. Fruits, veggies, high in fiber. I've personally been on a plant-based diet for 22 years now, and it's one of the best decisions I made. Praise God, I haven't even had a trip to the hospital for my own reasons, like or health issues. I'm here for my dad, but yeah, like those are some of the benefits. Like really making health one of your best investments and thinking long term. So eating the right food. And then for nutrition tips, we have your eat fresh fruits and veggies daily, not just once a week. Eat more whole grains and nuts, eat more fiber and less refined foods. So refined, like processed foods, try to avoid that, and make breakfast your biggest meal. So as they say, right, eat like a king for breakfast, like a queen for lunch, and like a pauper for dinner. So habang nagpo-progress yung araw natin, dapat our food should reduce. For most people, it's the opposite, right? Most of us like to eat heavy for dinner. Like that's when you are with your loved ones. But if you look at, let's say, nutritional studies, it's really best to have a good and big breakfast to start your day. And you can burn most of it throughout the day. Yeah. So let nutrition be your medicine, right? Make your food your medicine, not like actual drugs when you're old and you're super sick in the hospital. No, like start early, build good habits of nutrition. Next, exercise. Okay, here are some of the benefits. Strengthens the heart, it lowers high blood pressure, burns excess calories, and reduces stress. So if you guys feel stressed during this pandemic, make sure to exercise. And it's also going to do your mental health really good, right? Keys to success, choose a variety of exercises. So not always the same exercise over and over again. Switch it up, make it different. So you have different types of benefits and impacts. Exercise in fresh air. Hopefully you still have access to fresh air and sunshine, even if, let's say, you're in the city. Try to make it a point to really breathe fresh air and be outdoors somehow. Find a way. If there's a will, there's a way. Start slowly and work up gradually. Yeah. So wag naman biglain yung katawan nyo. Don't like shock yourself and go like heavy weights like the Olympians do right away. But really progress in your exercise and workout journey. And then, of course, if you can, here's some good guidelines to remember. 30 minutes a day would be amazing. If you can do a little more, great. Include strength training. And if you can do it daily, somehow, even in a few minutes, or spread it out like 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes later in the day, great. Action is a law of our being. Next, W stands for water. So the benefits of water: reduces heart disease risk, reduces fatigue. So if we're often tired pala as students, sometimes we think we're hungry, but what our bodies actually need is just water. So we need to, boost our liquid intake, especially during this time where, it's also hot and we live in the tropics. Usually instead of 8 glasses, we need to be consuming 12 glasses of water a day. I don't know if you keep track of your water consumption, but you should, and try to get like a mug and fill that up, or get one of these and then just keep track of how many glasses you drink. It also removes all your impurities, so nagka-cleanse din yung water, and it improves your alertness, right? Back to mental health, you're more alert. Here's some tips. Start the day with 2 glasses. Wow, that would be nice. Parang liniligo natin yung tiyan natin if we do that. So If we drink 2 glasses in the morning, you can even add, let's say, 6 pieces of calamansi. That's what we do at home. That also helps a lot. And then drink 8 to 10 glasses daily. Avoid drinking with your meals. Oh, that's really important. And I want to quickly touch on that because most of us, including myself, we tend to eat a meal that goes hand in hand with a beverage, right? Or when we go to a restaurant, sir, ma'am, ano po yung drinks nyo before you order your meal, right? But I found out later on that this is actually really a bad habit that we must try to avoid, because every time we ingest a liquid, right, our stomachs and our digestive process will focus on absorption of liquid first. So let's say we start drinking a beverage and then our meals come and we start alternating during the eating experience or the meal experience, drinking, eating. So the stomach is going to get confused and it's going to prefer to absorb all the liquids. So some of the physical food that's being taken in is not going to fully digest because the stomach focuses on absorption of liquids more than it does on the physical. So we might lose some nutrients that we would normally gain from the meal as it continues traveling onward into the small intestine, to the large intestine, and a lot of food is left undigested in the process. So the best is to drink 30 minutes to an hour before a meal, and ideally 1.5 to 2 hours after a meal, so that you really maximize digestion of the food. Yeah, and also try to avoid soft drinks. Soft drinks are high in sugar, very disguised. Question: do sodas taste better at room temperature or when they're cold? Diba mas masarap yung soda kapag malamig? And there's a whole science behind that. And apparently, it's because when these soft drinks are cold, right, at that perfect cold temperature, then the effect of the temperature, the coldness, numbs the tongue in such a way that the sweetness level is perfect to the taste. Whereas if you were to drink that soft drink warm, you usually taste the sugar more. But when it's cold, it numbs your tongue, your taste buds just enough so it tastes perfect. It's not interesting, right? So let's try to avoid these types of drinks. There's other studies about how bad soft drinks are for our bodies, actually. But sugar is a big factor there. It's high in sugar. Then stimulants like coffee. For tea, depends what kind of tea. But yung mga herbal teas like peppermint, chamomile, those are okay. But I think yung mga green tea and all that, best to avoid if you can. Okay, hot and cold showers. These have health benefits. So if you have access to hot and cold showers, you could stimulate circulation that way. You strengthen the immune system. It relaxes your bronchioles in asthmatic people. And it's invigorating. So our body is mainly produced out of water as well, or contains water, like 98%. So it's important for us to replenish that and to keep cleansing by drinking enough water. Okay, so we've done the word new. Let's move to start. The first letter is S, sunshine. Wow. Okay, tayo mga Pinoy, we kind of try to avoid the sun a lot, right? Because we want to stay fair and all that. Although I personally love the sun. I'd rather be tan than fair. But sunshine is so important for our health, right? It produces vitamin D. It kills germs. It helps normalize blood pressure. And it helps with depression. That's why when you look at people in the tropics, like Filipinos, for example, we tend to be happier, like more positive or resilient because of the climate that we're exposed to versus people that, let's say, live in Europe. They tend to have a more cold humor because also the weather impacts all of this. Here's what's important with regards to protection during sun exposure. Make sure you have your sunglasses to protect you against cataracts, because apparently that can form. Hats can help us prevent sunstroke. Avoid exposure between 10 and 2. So 10 a.m. to 2 in the afternoon to reduce the risk of skin cancer. And for people that have high blood pressure but still want to get some sun, my best advice is drink at least 2 glasses of water before you go out into the sun, and go in the sun, but stay for like a shorter period of time. Let's say like 15 minutes to the front of your body can be exposed to the sun, and then 15 minutes to the back. But make sure to drink water before you go out there. So 15 minutes daily is sufficient. I mean, I usually go longer, like 30. Let sunshine get into your rooms. Also very important, because remember, sunshine kills germs, right? So it's important for us to open our windows, even if we're just home and, like we're in quarantine. Let that sun come in and let it shine so that we clean up our room also, as it, fights all the germs and bacteria in our room. And also, yeah, if you can exercise outdoors and avoid sunburn, that would be great. Without sunlight, we could not exist. Interesting, right? Okay, next, temperance. Temperance is important in all things. What's another word for temperance? Balance, right? Like moderation, nothing in excess. Wag naman sumobra in anything. Just the right amount of anything. And then here, what's highlighted more is things like tobacco, which is smoking, which harms nearly every organ in the body pala. Also, most highway deaths involve the use of alcohol. Those who drink are more likely to use illicit drugs. So, yung mga students natin, stay away from all this. Stay away from the cigarettes. Stay away from the alcohol and all the drugs. These are never going to give you any benefit, okay? Especially long term. Signs of addictions: getting drunk or high on drugs regularly, drinking or using drugs when alone. So even if there's no occasion or you're not with anyone, you're already looking for these substances. That's a sign that you're addicted. Needing more to get the same and denying the problem. So you're not acknowledging that, you have this addiction. That's also a sign of addiction. How to break an addiction: consider the consequences. Yeah. So think about the long-term effects. Sulit ba? One of my employees, I recently talked to him about, throat cancer, because he's a smoker and he's 26 years old. And after I told him about all the effects, he wants to quit now. He's so scared, but he didn't know the effects until I mentioned them to him. So it's really important to understand the side effects of what it is we're consuming, what we're doing, right? So that way you can make better decisions long term. And then, replace old habits with better ones, right? Get support from family and friends and trust in divine power to overcome. Ayan. Health consists of temperance alone. Alexander Pope said so. Okay. I think we're almost done. The next letter is air. Or A for air, fresh air. So fresh air is really important. For those of you who live in the provinces or who have access to country life, bless you. You're so lucky. Because if you're in the city, it's harder to access fresh air. But there's so many benefits to this. We couldn't even operate without oxygen, but it vitalizes the blood, right? Because whatever we inhale through our lungs travels to the bloodstream, to the brain, for us to function. It relaxes the mind. See, we need oxygen. It kills germs and it helps clean the lungs. How can we get fresh air? So inhale through your nose, tapos exhale through your mouth, right? Avoid smoking and secondhand smoke, exercise in fresh air, and keep bedroom windows open. Yeah, so a lot of us might be living in, high rises and condos. So it's really important for us to make sure that we still air our apartments or units. We open the windows, let that sun come in, let that fresh air come in, circulate, kill the bacteria and germs. We want to definitely make sure we do that. And then here's some benefits of deep breathing as well. For air, relaxes the body, definitely. It oxygenates the brain for clear thinking. So fresh air is really important for our mental health, or also for clarity. Aside from eating the right foods, get that fresh air to function well. It helps prevent respiratory infections. Very important, because we live during a pandemic which deals with respiratory, malfunctioning. All right. So our lungs need as much fresh air as possible during this COVID-19 pandemic that we're facing. So if you have access or any opportunity to go to the countryside or to stay in the country for a while, choose or grab that opportunity and inhale and breathe. And it also induces sound sleep. So they usually say, right, when you sleep by the beach or in the mountains or just in the countryside, mas maganda yung tulog natin. Our sleep is better because of the air quality. We can live only minutes without air. Yeah, and that's also one thing I learned very recently because of, emergencies that we've had in the family with regards to oxygen. A person can only survive for 15 minutes max without oxygen. once you've gone over those 15 minutes, most likely brain dead na yung tao. So, if you ever encounter a situation at home where, you have like someone that's in need of oxygen, that's your window. It's technically not even enough to call an ambulance, get you on an ambulance, bring you to the ER. It's a very short window. So I highly recommend, especially during this pandemic, that we all invest in oxygen tanks at home and have that on standby in case we ever need it, no? Because it's a matter of life and death, especially during this pandemic. So fresh air. And then finally, the last letter is T for trust in God, divine power. So you would think that if you're exercising, eating enough of the right healthy foods, getting fresh air, sleeping enough, resting, that you have everything you need. But actually, without the Lord, without a divine power, hindi pa rin kompleto eh. Like you need that. And I always love to save the best for last. So trust in divine power. This leads us to inner peace and stability. It gives us power to forgive, as I said earlier, brings love into the home. It helps heal unresolved problems. It's important for us to grow in this trust in the Lord, especially now, right? Like where things seem so hopeless. Who or what do we trust? Do we trust our government? Do we trust the news? Or do we trust God? These are things we want to think about. But for sure, governments have failed in history, and people are not perfect. People have broken promises, right? The news isn't always accurate. There's also a lot of fake news, but God's promises never fail, right? There's like a whole book on like beautiful promises. If you have trouble sleeping at night, you definitely want to read the book of Psalms in the Bible. It's full of promises from the Lord. That'll help you trust him more. So growing in trust. Answered prayers build our trust. Amen. God cares for us like a father, and God never leaves us alone. Very true. Prayer is talking to God as to a friend. It gives us strength to cope with life's challenges and is the best. It is the breath of the soul. So in tranquility and trust is your strength. Okay. I just realized that I skipped R. I have R2, but I think I forgot that slide, which is before trust in God, and that represents rest. I'll just say it briefly, but yeah, I'll post more text on my socials about that. But it's also important for us to rest enough daily and also weekly. That's why people that have trust in the Lord or experience or undergo religious activities or are involved, let's say in church, they have a day of rest as well. Like we, for example, call it the Sabbath day. And we observe it on Saturdays. That's when we go to church or we worship the Lord. For others, it's Sunday, right? But it's really important to have enough rest. So a day of rest during the week for the Lord, ideally also, where you really just commune with him. And then your daily rest is really important, that you sleep on time and enough. So I think Harvard did this study where they tried to analyze when or what window of the day most of the cell regeneration happens in our bodies. And they said it's between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. So if you're asleep between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m., good job, because that is actually the window when your cells regenerate the most. That's when they can really recharge. And if you're awake, it's less likely or optimal for them to recharge. And we need that recharge. Like enough rest affects our mood the next day. It also helps us to be happier, and it definitely boosts our immune system. There's a strong relationship between enough rest and sleeping on time to our immunity. And again, going back to this whole pandemic that we're facing, we need strong immune systems, and rest contributes heavily to a strong and powerful immune system. Yeah, so those are the 8 laws of health that I want to share with you today. And as I conclude, I just wanted to mention real quickly, especially for our students, like a factor that we can consider in making us happier, because I'm sure all of us want to be happy, right? At the end of the day, we're all searching for happiness. We're all searching for love, I hope. And yeah, there was a study that was done with some adolescents, so students like your age, that basically are practicing or involved in anything religious or spiritual, that have faith in the Lord, right? So they did a study on those that were actively practicing, and it showed here in this study that there's a strong correlation between their happiness level and the frequency of the religious practices that they had during their adolescence. So for those who were going to church, more than once a month, right? Let's say you're a student and you're going to church like more than once a month. The study showed that you were happier than the students that would go, let's say, less than a month to church, right? So there was this correlation between happiness, and going to church among students and adolescents. So that's really interesting, I thought, to share. So I hope that you guys are making time for the Lord and growing spiritually. Here's also something interesting for those institutions and schools that actually have religious education as part of their curriculum, right? It also contributes to adolescent mental health. And at the lower portion of this article, it says there, previous studies have presented evidence of the positive effects of religious education against risky health behaviors such as alcohol use, drug use. There's something that's covering the rest of my text here, but just read that portion there, right? So it really highlights that religious education helps shape better teens and adolescents. And what else did I have here? It minimizes risky behavior, and it also helps you cope better. And coping is super important, especially during the pandemic. And it enhances our morality, right? And then here, this is also really interesting. CNN did a study on how going to church helps you live longer. Can you believe that? So kung nagsisimba tayo, nakaka-contribute pala yun sa ating extension of life. So yeah, they did this in the US, and Americans said that those who attend church, it keeps them grounded and gives them spiritual guidance. And it also showed, in a study, that regular attendance may help increase their lifespan. So if you still want to live long, right? Because I'm sure this pandemic is a chapter, make sure to make time for the Lord, right? And this is also really interesting for those who are facing disease and sickness. There was a book that was written called The Healing Power of Faith by Harold Koenig. He's an MD and a professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences at Duke University. He said that people who feel their life is part of a larger plan and are guided by their spiritual values have stronger immune systems, lower blood pressure, a lower risk of heart attack and cancer, and heal faster and live longer. So that just sums it up, that part. And it's in that book, right? But imagine, these are all the things that we need. We need strong immune systems. We want to be healthy holistically, mentally, physically, right? Emotionally, spiritually. Basically, if we have this faith has the power to heal. This faith has the power to help us live longer. This is the kind of faith that we need nowadays. And something more specific in terms of healing is the relationship between praying and life expectancy in cancerous patients. Look at this. It was confirmed that in advanced cancers, so it's more stage 3, stage 4, spirituality and religion have the primary role in life and life expectancy. Spirituality can help the compatibility development of those people and their excitement, flexibility through experience and positive feelings. So considering the positive aspect of life and the enhancement of hope and satisfaction of life. Because the people who believe in spirituality and use the spiritual methods to treat their illness have less mental disorders, less pain, less suffering, and less anxiety. Religion is known as a complementary method of treatment in medicine, and it seems that it can have a good effect when it is used together with some other treatment methods. All right. And then if you read further on, you can also see how, like, no matter what religion, whether it's like, let's say Islam here, or there's a few other examples, like let's say if you're Jewish, like this type of healing has really been effective, right? So if you have loved ones that are sick, diseased, or going through cancers, like this is something that you want to like turn to the Lord for. You want to enhance your faith for, you really want to get on your knees, pray, and ask the Lord or that divine power to strengthen you and your loved ones, especially during such a difficult time as now, right? And then as I wrap up, I also want to remind all of us, right, about the connection between social media and mental health, because let's face it, like we're all on our devices. Even now we're on our devices connecting through social media. But be mindful that, while it's good to be connected and to be social on social media, and that's also healthy for us, right? We must always check in with ourselves on why we are on social media, because like we learned earlier, we need to be temperate in all things, and there should never be an excess, and social media should never replace true to life experiences. See, so while many of us enjoy staying connected on social media, excessive use can fuel feelings of anxiety, depression, isolation, and FOMO. You know what FOMO stands for? Fear of missing out, because especially when you start building a following on social media, there's this constant pressure on a lot of account holders, let's say on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook. Like as you build your following, you're so worried that you're not able to feed your followers new content. Like, so there's always this pressure on you. And for some people, it's really inhibiting, and it becomes a problem, and they become anxious or stressed out because of that. And I could admit that kind of happened to me, because I used to have a previous Instagram account which had way more followers than my current one. It was actually hacked, my last Instagram account. But in retrospect, I think it was a blessing in disguise, because it made me realize these things. I had thousands of followers, and they were highly engaged. So I always felt like I had to post on the internet. I had to be present on social media. I had to put like real life obligations aside, because my followers are waiting for me, and I have to be involved, like part of the conversation. So this is if it's done in excess, it's not a good thing, and it can affect our mental health, right? And ultimately our physical health too, because if we become stressed out, our body could respond to that negatively. So there are ways to modify that, of course, and just be temperate about things, right? If you can, use time wisely. So instead of being on our phones, on Facebook, right? Filipinos are the most active on Facebook globally. Can you believe that? We set the record. Filipinos are also the number one consumers of like pornographic, content, which is not something to be proud of, honestly. But we're in the top of the list. So we want to make sure we use our time and divert it for better things, like growing spiritually, building relationships and engagements outside of, like the gadgets. Yeah. So just, know your limitations, right? And then finally, I just want to, of course, end always with the Lord, going back to this concept of what we behold, right? I definitely recommend that instead of just beholding our social media, gadgets, celebrities and whatnot nowadays, whatever's trending nowadays, there's so much rubbish, sorry for my language, but like on the internet. It's important for us to, filter and to really select what valuable information we feed our minds and our lives, so that we stay positive, encouraged, hopeful, right? And one of the best things we can or behold is Jesus, right? And if you look at Jesus's life in Luke 2:52, in this one short verse, it says there, Jesus, as he was growing up, right, he increased in wisdom, which represents the mental aspect. He increased in stature, which represents the physical aspect, and in favor with God, which is spiritually, he increased, he grew, and in favor with man, right, which is socially. So as we behold Jesus and how he lived his life, he grew in all those aspects. So he had that holistic growth, and we want to make sure we have that, and we behold him as our, prime example. I mean, the man died for you and I, like who better to look at, And finally, Romans 12, 1-2, really, really powerful verses. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service. So we owe it to God to take good care of our bodies. And that involves sacrifices, right? Like involves sacrificing, let's say, like those foods that taste good but are not healthy for our mental health and our bodies, right? Or those so substances that will only harm us and shorten our life. Like those are all sacrifices, quote unquote, that we make. But it's because we want to be healthier. We want to invest in our health. We want to protect our temple, right? Which is a gift from God, right? Jesus died with, and that was the price he paid for us to have this chance at life and even at eternal life, if we do well on earth. So, keep that in mind, especially the students, that you should really take good care of yourselves. And the second part of that verse or passage, and be not conformed to this world. So never settle for like just what's in the world and the limitations of the world and the temporality of the world, but be ye transformed, as we said, right? The mind can transform by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. So let's really behold what is right, healthy, pure, holy, and transform in the process, because our human brain has the ability to and become that best version of ourselves. Even in the middle of a pandemic, it is possible. And finally, my advice to all these students out there, based on my experience of 37 years of life, being in the world, being a beauty queen, going through fame, going through travels, fortune, all of that, all the things we desire when we're young, right, is true happiness, contentment, and joy really comes from finding Jesus. So if you think, there's something that you're missing, or you want to be happy, but you're not sure how, start with the Lord, really. Like, you've already seen the studies of like all the benefits, right? And those are like actual empirical evidences, but like imagine, grow your faith, perfect your character, be like a really amazing, beautiful person inside, and it'll just like, you'll just glow outward, like have that perfect character. They even say, right, there's only one thing we can take from this world to the next, and that's character. So no one can take that away from you. Don't destroy your life, right? Now that you're still young, you have it all in front of you, ahead of you. You have the energy, you have the opportunities that are still ahead to do something good while you exist here in this world. Be a useful member of society. Don't be like a curse, be that blessing to your family, to your friends, to your relatives, to your local community. Yeah, be that blessing in society. Honor your parents. I'm trying to do that while I'm here in the hospital right now. And then going back to my experience as a former beauty queen, although I'm truly grateful for that experience, right? I must also admit that, like, in the process, when I was aiming to be a beauty queen before, my ambitions were more selfishly driven, more about me, building something for me, my future, how to be remembered, my legacy. But as I transformed and renewed mentally through God's grace and help, it's not about me anymore. It's about him, and how can we give glory back to him. And always remember, right, that the carnal mind, the mind that we're naturally born with, according to Romans 8:7, is actually in enmity with God. So we are naturally, mentally not like like on the side of like how God would want us to be. It's like the complete opposite. But with God's help, we can become favorable and precious in His mind, or in His eyes, rather. So just remember that there needs this transformation. This transformation needs to happen. There we go. Yeah. And then, as I said from the get-go, we live in the time of a pandemic, and this is the time to really invest in our health, in our mental health, our physical health, in all areas of health. Health is really wealth, and it's, it can define your future, like your health today, the choices you make, the meals you eat, everything is interconnected. So make that investment in your health. Count your blessings. There's so much to be grateful for every day. Even if you feel like you have nothing and it's so routine, there's still something to be grateful for. The fact that you're alive, the fact that you are alive, you have purpose. And make sure to behold the right things. My suggestion, behold Jesus, behold His life, His character, so you can be transformed into who He was in character, and as a result, be a blessing during this time of our existence, right? So that being said, you definitely matter. Mind your health. It all starts in the mind. Protect your mind and keep it healthy, and make the right decisions, because every decision you make with this freedom of choice that you have, that's a gift actually, has an effect, right? Every choice you make has an effect. So make sure that your effects are going to be favorable to you long term. With that being said, Camille, I think I'm done. I don't know if the students have any questions for me, but yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, Sans, for that invaluable knowledge that you have blessed us with. And I'm sure that our students have learned so much. You took so much effort to put this presentation together. Yes, thank you so much. I myself, I learned so much.
Oh, praise God.
So yeah, so the students have questions, and let's put one of the questions up here on the screen, and I'll read it for you, and you can answer. Yeah. All right. So this is from Sir Chris Del Prado. He is a teacher at TCMayerS. And his question is, how can we encourage the young ones to be able to take into consideration the sacrifices in life for their betterment?
Wow, that's super, super big question. How can we encourage the young ones to be able to take into consideration the sacrifices in life for their betterment? Okay. Yeah, so I think that during this pandemic, a lot of us have learned how to sacrifice, right? And just because you're giving up something or you're sacrificing something doesn't mean that you're going to let go of something that you should have. Some things are really worth sacrificing in order for you to become a better person, whether that's a bad habit, or let's say an unhealthy relationship with someone, or a certain type of food, right? Once you are aware of the things that are healthy for your mental health, for you as a person, you can start to either build on what's good for you or let go of what's not good for you. So life is not complete without sacrifices, basically. And if we go back to Jesus, he was a really good example of like how much he sacrificed. He even sacrificed his own life for us, right? So this is really something that we must understand, that is part of life, especially if you want to grow, right? Yeah. So I hope that helps, and I hope I answered the question.
Thank you so much. All right, so here is another question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So how would I help myself to be positive even if I see around me is not delightful to see?
Yeah, that's a really good question. actually for all of us, but it sounds like a student. So we all have those moments, right, where we're just like saddened about the situation or the things that are happening around us. But we have to consciously bring our thoughts and emotions back to not just happy thoughts, but also our purpose here, okay? Because let's face it, like we all have a purpose, right? And God has a plan for each one of us. And honestly, His plan is really perfect for every person. It's just that we always think we know better what's best for us, right? But we must trust that. There is a bigger plan here for all of us, and as we go through these days that are sometimes quite discouraging, they're not permanent, okay? Like life is composed of like storms and also rainbows, trials and blessings, difficulties and hardships, but also like miracles, so I think that when we are facing a day that's more of a sad day or something that really discourages us, we must, if you trust in the Lord, I would definitely recommend that you pray, get on your knees and pray, and also, talk to people, express through your friends, keep each other encouraged. Don't let it affect you to the point where you actually get sick already, right? Because we know now that whatever fuels the mind or our emotions can also affect us physically, right? So make sure to consciously stay positive and find sources of inspiration every day. Go online, go on YouTube if you have access to the internet, and like watch something inspirational, read the Bible. Like there's so many promises there at the end of the spiritual battle that we're on, like part of in this world. Good wins. Jesus gonna win, okay? So stay hopeful. So those are like things I personally would tell myself also. And yeah, and I think if there's like something that makes you happy, like let's say certain foods, or as long as they're healthy, maybe treat yourself to something nice that you like to enjoy, just to, just stay positive too, I hope that helps. Yeah. And make sure to vent.
Wow. Yeah, those are really, really good tips. Okay, so we have another question. Okay, so Russell is asking, Ma'am, what is dopamine detox?
Oh, did I touch about that? No, touch on that in my study, because I don't think I got a chance to do that. But maybe best to detox, to Google it. One second.
All right, so dopamine detox. For the student, I know a little bit about that, so I can share a little bit. So dopamine, we get a rush of dopamine when you seek and you find. So when you're on your phone, you keep on seeking. You're seeking, yung crush ko, anong ginagawa niya, ganyan, ganyan. And pag kita mo, and you found it, you get this rush of dopamine. Okay, so you feel so good, and it's so addictive. And so yeah, when you look on YouTube, you're seeking, and then you find what you're looking for, you get that rush of dopamine. So a dopamine detox would be just, and aside from just the cell phone, dopamine, you can get dopamine from other things, like from your surroundings, like activities, or just by your thoughts, So when you seek something and you find something, you get a dopamine rush. And a dopamine detox is obviously not seeking and finding. So some people would do dopamine detoxes by not using their cell phones for one day. And that's actually good because it keeps them calmer, and because you get that anxiety, when you keep on seeking and finding, you're just so anxious all the time. So that's why there's some people who do dopamine detoxes, and it's very good for your mental health, diba? I said that yes, uh, Sir Rance Santa Maria, our teacher at school, and he's also a registered nurse. He says that dopamine is a neurotransmitter, a happy hormone. That is right. So it makes us happy. It makes us feel good. So I hope that I was able to ask your question. I was able to answer your question. I took
Thanks,
it from
Camille.
Sandra.
Good. Yeah, no, thanks for taking over. My dad also had a situation here, so I kind of had to
Yeah.
stay in. But yeah, no, I'm learning actually as you were sharing that. Makes sense. So dopamine, yeah, definitely it's something that excites us. It makes us happy. It's yeah, I think a transmission in the brain also that happens, or signal that excites us. And going back to what I spoke about earlier with certain foods, right? Like sugar or cheese, or these like also excite the brain, right? But not in the healthiest way, right? So they actually lead to certain forms of addiction. So when you were talking about the detox, the dopamine detox, yeah, it's letting go or avoiding those things that would create that kind of spike or excitement, which isn't necessarily healthy for us all the time. But yeah, I like the example with the phone that you gave, and
Yeah.
the crush.
Yeah. With a crush, yeah. Okay, so we have another question from L. Hello po, Ate Sandra. Ask ko lang po if calorie deficit is a good diet for those who want to get fit.
Caloric deficit. I mean, it works for some of my friends. They really do count their calories, right? But I think that what's key here is that you have a balanced diet, and also, I mean, if you are on plant-based, even better. I'm such an advocate for plant-based diets because there's like really no disadvantage to it. Like I've been on one for 22 years, as I said. But yeah, like if you pair up your food intake with good exercise and you rest well, I think you should be good to go. Yeah. So for some people it works, they really count calories, but I personally don't have the time and the patience to do that every day. So I would probably just make sure I have a balanced lifestyle. And if I eat a little bit more today, I'll make sure to burn it through a workout. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. So I think that can go back to what you were saying, temperance. So too much of a deficit is also bad. You know, you can't starve yourself.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So you can't do too much of a calorie deficit. All right. So that is all for our questions.
Oh, great
All right.
questions, guys.
Yes. All right. So
Thank you.
that ends our question and answer. But you stay there, all right? I'm just gonna run our ads, all right? But before we officially end our webinar, let me inform you that TCMS enrollment is still ongoing. TCMS is duly recognized by the Department of Education, offering preschool up to senior high school. We offer all academic strands. We have the General Academic Strand, ABM Strand, UM Strand, and STEM strands. To enroll, our online enrollment link is posted below. To keep updated, please subscribe to our social media accounts that are right below. You may like and share our videos such as this one, our episode today. So, Miss Sandra, do you have any promotions you want to share with us and your final message to all of our viewers?
Yeah, let's just keep in touch, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. If you have more questions or more thoughts, I'd love to hear them. I'd love to stay in conversation with all of you. My Instagrams and socials are on your screens below. So feel free to send me a message, and let's keep the conversation going, as I said. And just remember to stay healthy and to be a blessing to at least one person every day. That's my mantra in life right now. Just be a blessing to at least one person a day, and I think you'll be on the right track. Yeah. Thank you also to Camille and Gideon and the whole Montessori School, like Covenant, for this opportunity to really share such important information. I learned a lot myself as I was preparing to share it with all of you. And even through your questions, I learned a lot too. So thank you for that. And stay strong, stay healthy, stay fit. Yeah. And stay faithful.
All right. So that ends our webinar. All right. Bye.
God bless. Thank you.
God bless.
Bye, everyone.